Hey guys, it's Shannon and John from That DIY Couple.
Today we're going to be doing a financial update.
So we've taken you guys on a little bit of a journey through our net worth. We took you back to 2008 when we had recently graduated from college, and then we took you to 2013 when I graduated from law school. And now we're going to take you to 2014, which is our first year in the workplace.
So we had just moved to New York City. So we had just moved in together in New York. This is a picture of us, I think, at yet a different weight than we were before and are now.
Yeah, this was us going to a Billy Joel concert on my birthday.
Yeah, that was a great concert. But as I said in previous videos, if you haven't followed along, the rest of our channel, we talk a lot about our weight loss, healthy eating, that sort of stuff. So to figure out how we lost all the weight that we had then, click on any of our previous videos where we talk about our diet and how we went through that. But this video is about our finances.
Right. So we were renting an apartment in New York City. It was very expensive. I had just started at a high-paid legal job, and we were starting to think about tackling our student loans, which were enormous, or potentially making investments. And you were working at a startup still.
I was working at a startup, and I don't know if I made really any money in 2014. Maybe I made a little bit that I took just from my startup as kind of like to keep the lights on, to keep me surviving. But I was basically making no money. As I talked about in a previous video, I made a decision a year after I graduated from law school. So this is 2011, 2012. In 2012, I decided that I wouldn't pursue the sort of stereotypical big law legal job that was expected of me and a lot of my classmates went into, and instead to be entrepreneurial and do startups. And now I'm in 2014. It's my second year of doing it. So my contributions, I was working in 2011, 2012. But starting in 2012, my financial contributions to our, living expenses and net worth were pretty low. And
mine were zero. Mine were negative because I was in school and taking out loans.
Right.
So here we go. 2014, I am working. At this point, we had in the previous year, 2013, $249,200 in student loans. And in 2014, the interest on those loans actually capitalized, shooting our student loan debt up to $299,000.
So this is an important point about capitalizing student loan debt. The way that student loan debt works, if you're not familiar with it, is that when you are in college, or in our case in law school, in Shannon's case, you can get payments on your student loans deferred, meaning that you don't have to actually pay your student loans back. Like you won't be penalized for doing that, but interest will still continue to accrue on the balance of the loans. And if you don't pay off that interest, the interest will capitalize, which means it becomes part of the loan. So one huge mistake that we did that we're still regretting is we didn't pay back the interest that had accrued during law school on your loans. And so then it became part of your loans, and then we had to pay interest on that as well.
Yeah, so whatever you have to do, if you're a student currently in school, in law school or graduate school, get a job at the library, be a barista, whatever you have to do to make those smaller interest payments while you're in school, highly recommend it. Don't let your interest capitalize. For us, it meant about $50,000 additional debt that was
debt and debt that we have to pay interest on.
Right, which is was total.
Crazy.
At this point in our lives, we were so incredibly freaked out about this debt. It was terrifying. 2014, we also got a car, I guess.
So yeah, what happened in 2014 is that we moved from New York to New Jersey. So we were living in New York, and we had decided that we were really tired of renting. So this is a decision that we made that I think a lot of people who follow different financial schools, we talked about this in our first video, might really criticize us for. But it's a decision that we made, and we can talk about why we did it. But what we did is, instead of renting in Manhattan, we were paying about $3,000 a month to rent in Manhattan. We decided that we would buy a house, and our mortgage payments on the house were actually lower. Mortgage payments plus everything else we had to pay on the house were actually lower by a substantial amount than what we were paying in Manhattan to rent.
Yeah, so we found this, it was 2014. There were still amazing deals coming out of the recession. We found a foreclosure that had been abandoned for a number of years, was owned by a bank. for $200,000, about 15 minutes from Times Square. We bought it in the dead of winter. It didn't have electricity on. It needed a new roof. There was a lot of things that needed to be fixed with the property, but for us, this was an amazing financial opportunity because we were able to put very little down.
We used an FHA loan, which we can talk about. I think we mentioned in previous videos about how we did that, but we basically put very little down in return to taking out a big mortgage, as well as PMI, which is private mortgage insurance, which is an additional payment on top of the normal monthly payment that you do.
And we were able to rent out the top. It was a duplex. We were able to rent out the top floor to a friend, and so we were actually, as compared to renting in Manhattan, we were saving significant amounts of money every month. So for us, we were able to justify taking out a little bit more debt to put ourselves in a better financial position in the long run. But that also required us to buy a car because we could no longer rely solely on public transportation. So we bought a new car, right?
That's another big, huge regret. So in addition to the student loan debt capitalizing, we bought a new car, and we bought it, I think, for about $22,000 or something like that.
Well, it must have been more than that because our debt was $23,000.
Okay, $23,000.
I think it was $26,000.
I think it was like around 20. I don't think we put like almost any money down in the car. We
got it at like very low interest.
Yeah, it was like a 0.9%
yeah.
interest rate, but even that is not a great deal because within a year, probably the value of the car was $10,000 less or whatever than what we bought it for. So
yeah, in hindsight, retrospect, we would not have bought a new car.
We still have the car, and at this point, we're going to drive it until it is no longer a vehicle. And now we've paid it off. Now it's today is 2019, so we're talking 5 years later. But at the time, seemed like the right thing to do. Didn't really think about it. Didn't really think about the financing options. Didn't really think about the long term of what we're doing, but we bought a new car, and so we had a $20,000 car loan starting in 2014.
Okay. In 2013, we had $14,800 in credit card debt, and I am sad to say that in 2014, that credit card debt went up to $80,000. And the reason for this is because, well, we were being somewhat irresponsible, but also because we were saving up for our down payment on our house and then making renovations consistent with fixing up the house. And we were able to talk ourselves into this because we had these like 0% offers where you don't have any interest charge for the first 18 months, and you can do a balance transfer and you can keep everything at 0% interest, and then it shoots up to the regular APR on credit cards, which is between 16 and like 22%. And so we were able to justify this in our heads at the time by thinking that this was like, by investing this money in real estate was a better use than paying it down. But all of this was accumulating to stress us out even more about debt, of course.
This is a game that we played for a while, and you can see in our updates that we're going to be doing how our credit card debt changes over time. But again, I think 2013, 2014 was a series of bad financial decisions that we made shortly after starting professional life. Some of which have guided us a little bit. The real estate thing is a component that became really important in our lives, and we wouldn't have done that except for taking out debt. So I don't regret that. But other things like the student loan capitalization, credit cards, car loans,
new car.
Those are really, really dumb, and I definitely regret them even now. And I think that the amount of money that we wasted on that sort of stuff is sort of crazy.
Okay, so we got our primary residence in 2014, and we took out a mortgage for $192,300. So as you can see, we bought that house for like $200,000. We put very little into it. It was mostly financed. And then we actually, at the very end of the year, bought a second investment property.
Yeah.
So that was for $192,000.
No, it's for about $240,000. So
sorry, that was the total.
That's another reason for the credit card debt, is because not only were we saving up money for our first house, but we were also saving money for a second house. So as Shannon alluded to, we got a great deal on this house in a city close to New York City, and about 7 blocks away we found almost the same house for basically the same price. And we had been doing so well in the first house financially. As Shannon mentioned, not only were we renting out the top floor of the house, but we were also renting out both floors of the house and living in our own basement.
Oh yeah, so we moved down to our basement during this time, an unfinished terrible basement.
That the ceiling height is about 6 feet 2 inches, and I'm about 6'5".
And at some point we started renting out all of the rooms individually, and we were making like several $1,000s per month above our mortgage. And so we felt like this was kind of house hacking turbocharged, and that this was like a very, very good return on investment for the amount we were putting into it.
Which I think it was.
Which it was. Yeah. But that allowed us to essentially buy another investment property down the road. And at this point in our trajectory, we are getting very, very comfortable with debt. We're in the mindset, you got to spend money to make money. All these great like entrepreneurs and real estate people have taken out significant amounts of debt. And so
I think, debt certainly for investment purposes.
Right.
We just to give you a sense of the financials, we have another video where we talk a little bit about this, but we went from paying about $3,000 a month living in Manhattan at the beginning of 2014 to right before we bought the second property. I think we were making about $2,000 or $3,000 a month, including the amount of money that we were paying for our house, like mortgage, interest.
So we were gaining
taxes,
equity
insurance.
And making money on the place where we lived. We were living in horrible
We went from a
squalor,
shift of
but
$3,000 paid to making $3,000. $6,000 a month, where we now had all of a sudden, just because we were doing this with real estate. And so in a matter of maybe 3 months, 5 months, we were able to save up another down payment for a second house.
Right, while still putting stuff on credit card debt at 0%, thinking, we're really beating the market. Anyway, with this new house, it was slightly larger, and so we were actually able to rent out. We moved down to the basement again. Of our new house.
Also two-family. Yeah.
Also two-family. And we were able to rent out the 8 bedrooms in that house for $1,000 or so each, sometimes more than $1,000. And so it was bringing in $8,000 a month. We were paying about $2,200 at most to own it. So that house was then making us about $6,000 a month, or give or take a little bit.
And we were living there.
And we were living it.
Yeah.
So we got the real estate bug a little bit. Granted, this is like a full-time job. This became basically a full-time job for you.
This is how I started doing real estate full-time.
Right.
And I think we have another video talking a little bit about that, but I want to talk about that in a different context too. And I have some social media stuff about how I got into real estate. That's not that DIY couple, but yeah. So it's how I got into real estate. So it was very lucrative, but it's also very time consuming. It's not passive income. Just
right. This particular type of shorter term rentals was not. In 2014, we also still had a law firm loan outstanding to John's old law firm. The balance hadn't gone down because I think you just weren't paying it. So it was kind of a pay as you go, or pay as you feel. I think what happened was you were able to tell them that you were doing it.
Yeah,
so
they
wasn't
deferred
making
it
any money, and they deferred it. All right. So moving to our assets, in 2013 we had about $17,000 in our checkings, and we had $2,000 in personal property. By 2014 we had upped our checkings and savings up to $20,000, and you might wonder why keep so much money liquid form when you've got $80,000 of credit card debt and lots of other loans. And our thought was, we're property owners now, we need to be prepared in case something goes wrong with one of our properties. We had $270,000 in our investment property, and we had $230,000 in our primary residence. The value of our car was around $21,000. We had just bought it. And the value of our personal property was $4,000 for a grand total of $545,000 in assets.
So net worth, again, as we talked about it in the previous videos, the traditional calculation. In our traditional calculation, we're including the value of our primary residence, even though for various reasons we don't like to do that when calculating our net worth. But because a lot of other people do that, we're going to show it to you guys. So in 2013, we had $19,000 in assets, and we had about $274,000 in debt, which meant that our net worth was negative $255,000. In 2014, we greatly increased our assets, but correspondingly increased our debt by about the same amount. So $545,000 in assets, $796,300 in debt means that our net worth was negative $251,300, So we increased our net worth by $3,700 in the course of one calendar year.
And that includes, as part of our assets, our primary residence, our personal property, and the value of our car, which is how most people calculate net worth. But John and I take a more conservative approach, which is we like to calculate our net worth for our own peace of mind based on the things that we would actually liquidate in a crisis situation. And so we wouldn't want to sell our primary residence in a crisis, and we wouldn't want to sell all of our personal property, and we wouldn't want to sell our car. We think that we sort of need those things to survive and thrive. And so when we calculate our net worth, we like to do it in a conservative way, which excludes those assets. So you can see the reconciliation here on the next page.
Here we're removing our primary residence and the value of our car. So that means that our total assets are $290,000 as opposed to originally $545,000. And then recalculating our net worth, going to using our more conservative asset calculations, we're still including the mortgage on our property and our car, or the debt in our car.
Because we would still have to pay those things in a fire sale scenario.
Right. So using that amount in 2013, you can see that our recalculated net worth was negative $257,000. In 2014, it's negative $506,300. So by that conservative amount, we've actually lost about $250,000 of net worth.
So this is, got us freaked out because in our conservative calculation, we are $500,000 in debt, and we are 3 years in your case, into the workforce. So this is scary for us, but at the same time, we are homeowners. We have an investment property, and we can see that we have probably, at this point, we were making probably $3,000 a month on the first house that we bought, and we were making like $8,000 on the second, because at this point we were.
We're like netting in our pocket something like $3,000 on the first house and about like $6,000 on the second house or so. So we're making about.
I think we were netting. Yeah, okay, I think you're right. Yeah.
So we're making about $8,000 or $9,000 every given month just from the places that we live, and also living for free. So that was a huge thing that happened to us in 2014. That kind of kickstarted a lot of what we would go on to do in real estate, as you'll see in the years after that, and kind of has defined a lot of what I'm doing in my life. But I think...
And in addition, I was making a law firm salary,
right,
which was helpful.
I think that we made a lot of financial mistakes in 2013 and 2014, as we talked about earlier in the video. But at the same time, we set up a lot of things financially that have really come to impact, for good and for bad, our lives today, 5 years later.
And this was really still a very low time in the real estate market, and in the years that have followed, we didn't buy overvalued real estate. We bought real estate that could not go further down in value.
Yeah.
We bought stuff out of foreclosure that needed work. We learned how to do the work ourselves. We did so many repairs on our own. This is part of where that DIY couple name comes from. And we learned a tremendous amount during this process while making super financial sacrifices. So we were living in these terrible unfinished basements while renting out all the other
rooms. We'll do a whole video on that portion of it. Yeah. But so there's a lot going on behind the scenes kind of leading to where we were. But anyways, that's where we were at the end of 2014.
So you can see here, just a little graph.
So this graph, just to summarize what we've gone, if you haven't seen our previous videos, then definitely check them out because we explain more a little bit about where we're at. But just very briefly, the pink in this graph are our liabilities, and those have gone up a lot. The green in the graph are assets. Those have also come up, but less so than our liabilities. And the yellow part is our traditional net worth. That's calculated including our primary residence in our net worth. The next graph kind of shows the same information, except we're not including our primary residence in our net worth. So obviously the yellow line, which is our recalculated net worth, is a lot lower than it would be were we including our primary residence. But
as you guys will see in future videos, these numbers change. And I believe that this 2014 number is actually the lowest that our net worth ever got. And then it starts to the curve starts to bend and it starts to go up. And today, many years later, we're in a really good financial place, and we hope to bring you guys along for the journey. We're hoping that this serves as a little bit of an inspiration for anyone who's really in a financial hole. In the process of explaining how our net worth has gone up over the years, we're going to talk about some of the mistakes that we've made and some of the things that we think we did right. And we certainly aren't perfect, and we'd love to hear, your criticisms as well as your praise. I'm sure we'll be getting more criticism than praise on this video, but hopefully in later videos you'll see how things ended up working out.
That's it for this time. Thanks, guys. Please follow along in our future videos.
Until next time, do well and always make things better.
Oh.